The next definition is dust cover box, C, grout guard. Okay, so a grout guard. Let's take a look and see what a grout guard is, what the definition is, and that will inform us in terms of how we're going to proceed with discussing this. Okay, grout guard, dust box, grout guard. Okay, a metal cover attached to a frame behind reinforcement for mortised or recessed hardware items to prevent grout from entering the mounting holes. Also referred to as a dust cover guard, masonry guard, mortar guard, plaster guard, dust box, mortar guard, mortar box, things of that nature. Okay, let's talk about it. Let's grab one and I'll show it to you. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Okay, so we are looking at the mortar guard or dust box, guard. This is an example of a mortar guard, dust box, grout guard. Okay, this happens to be a piece of masonry frame. Imagine that there was a prep here for a hinge. Frame goes in, frame goes into the opening. The mason is there with his cinder block, his cement block. Boom, they go down. He builds that, and he's going with the trowel, and the trowel's going, and he's backfilling into the frame. He's backfilling into the frame. Next course goes up. Good. Backfilling into the frame. Third course goes up. He's backfilling. What happens when you backfill? You fill this so that you can always tell when you wrap on it, a grout-filled installed frame, solid. If you don't have a way to deflect that grout from sealing over your hinge prep, you for sure have just ruined the installation. And what I mean is, I did not know I had the real deal here. I didn't know I had this piece. If you go about that, you're going to fill the holes, the tapped holes, the drilled and tapped holes for the fasteners. That's what a mortar box is. So in masonry frames, and you'll know a masonry frame because it has a return. It does not have a back bend return like this has a back bend return. That's a typical drywall frame profile. You're always going to have mortar guards or grout boxes. Always, every single time. If you have a masonry frame, that's standard. If someone orders a masonry frame, it's going to always have grout boxes. You will always have them over your strike, over your hinges. In fact, you need to have them over everything that is for hardware that is most certainly templated. This would be templated. However, it's a good idea to have it as well when you are reinforcing for a closer, a rim exit device strike, or in this case, this would probably most definitely be for an electric strike because of its conduit punch out here. You know, I'm thinking of times customers have called me and said, I've got this electric strike in my hand and I can't get it in. Why? Because it's filled with concrete. I'm like, how did the mason do that? I don't know. So it's really hard to cold chisel all that back out of there. Now, surface closers that you're reinforcing for, rim exit device strikes, hardware compatible weather stripping. One trick that some masons love, actually the hardware installers, the door hangers like it, is you'll take this same material, your jamb. Let's say this is a header and you've got a piece of steel welded in here for the parallel arm bracket. What some guys do before they give the frames to the masons is they'll take whatever thickness, let's just say 1 inch, inexpensive foam, whatever the proper term is, just white sheet rigid insulation, cut it, and you're better off with the pink stuff because cutting that bubbly insulation gets everywhere, and just masking tape. And what that does is, when the mason comes and he backfills, he's not going to pollute or fill that cavity with where you need to put sheet metal screws for a parallel arm bracket or hardware compatible gasket. That's the bottom line. So you are literally looking to emulate exactly what is being shown here. Without that dust guard and you're going to backfill, you got a big problem. It happens all the time, and you just need to make sure that it's not your neck that the rope goes over when it comes to that happening all the time. Let's just switch to the screen view. and take a closer look at the definition. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Okay, let's get back and finish up this definition. So where we are right now in the glossary is dust box, cover, see grout guard. So let's go down to page, I think, 17. We'll look at grout guard. Grout guard. A metal cover attached to a frame behind reinforcement from mortised or recessed hardware items to prevent grout from entering the mounting holes. Also referred to as dust cover guard, masonry guard, mortar guard, or plaster guard. Yeah, all the above. Now, you'll also note if you've ever installed a residential deadbolt or a residential lock, you're going to also have a piece of plastic. Nowadays, plastic. Sometimes they're metal, or it used to be, called a dust box. And yeah, here's a good example of a dust box. That's going to go behind the strike. So when you prep the jamb and you breach through that 3/4 lumber, let's say, into the stud behind there, you're going to have particulate that creeps from the interior of the wall through the hole in the strike. So you want a dust box for that. Now, if you have masonry frames installed and you're trying to install dust boxes, no. In fact, you don't need them because you already have them. And in fact, if I was doing a job and I thought of it, I would specify to the factory less dust boxes, because I don't want the call, if I know that they're masonry frames, because I don't want the call that says, what do I do with this box? Even though there's one there. I don't want that call. And so I would specify the locks to come without them. Now, the factory may or may not accommodate that, but nonetheless, that's how I would do it. Yeah, okay. So grout, you can see how a frame looks when it's packed solid. Okay, yeah, that's problematic when you're trying to attach hardware to it and run screws into it. Even on the, well, the inside of the door is not necessarily going to have those. But let's see what we can find. Another great example of what it looks like when it's been filled in. Poured in place, most likely, is what that is. You definitely don't want to get involved in any of that. And in the manual as well, you know, this is what a dust box or mortar guard looks like over a strike prep. It's the dashed line that you see here behind the frame, behind the hinge prep on the frame that I showed you physically earlier. That's it. You're going to see those all the time, every time. And then again, it's a nice little tip to throw that at your client, to tell them, hey, you know, when you're installing these closers, you can either upsell the client to put dust boxes over those screw locations for the reinforcement for the closer, because generally the person that buys the doors, frames, and hardware, he's not the mason, although sometimes they are. He's not the mason. So, great example right here. Hey, client, you ever have any trouble getting the screws in for weather stripping? Oh, goodness, you can't believe it. Well, for an extra X dollars, I can put some foam insulation in there for you. You'll be the only guy he comes to from now on. You better believe that. Looking for just a variation on that example. A lot of STC material we're looking at. Yeah, we'll have to use our imagination on that. We're showing the reinforcements in the door. Reinforced for closers. Yeah, they're not really showing us that. But a closer reinforcement, you know, so you come up with some inexpensive material and you just pressure fit it in. And that's great. Here's a half sleeve. This is it right here. You're going to take that half sleeve and it's going to go in like this. Here's your header. That half sleeve is going to go like this. Now what's great about that is you can do a PA, you can do an RA, and you can do a TJ. But there's going to be screws either here or here, possibly here as well. So for you to fill that in with something, or at least impress the client enough that you know what you're talking about, I think that's a great idea. Okay, let's move on. The next definition is Dutch door. All right, let's move on to Dutch doors. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.